Samantha Carter was the epitome of success, or so she thought. At 30 years old, she had carved out a life many could only dream of. A stunning penthouse high above Manhattan, a closet full of designer labels from Paris to Milan, and a reputation as one of the most ambitious young executives in the financial world. Samantha carried herself with an air of infallibility, a confidence that came not only from her own accomplishments, but from the lineage she came from. Old money. That was the term whispered in hushed admiration when her name was mentioned at high-profile cocktail parties and charity dinners. The Carter family had been woven into the fabric of American elitism for 3 generations. Samantha wasn't just successful, she had the power, influence, and status to back it all up. And yet, beneath her pristine appearance and carefully curated image, there was a gnawing emptiness she refused to acknowledge. After all, she had everything anyone could ever want. Didn't she? James Conway had once thought the same. At 40, James carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom, the scars of a life that had once seemed golden. He, too, had come from old money, expertly navigating the business world with the confidence of someone who had always been handed a head start. But his name, his legacy, had been dragged through the mud during his divorce from Kimberly Thorne, the social climber who had promised him forever, only to leave him questioning everything. Kimberly had chipped away at his wealth, chipped away at his reputation, and nearly chipped away at his dignity. But James was smarter than she gave him credit for. An ironclad prenuptial agreement and decades of strategic foresight had saved his financial standing, though the messy divorce still left wounds that were slow to heal. The love, or what he once thought was love, had been nothing more than greed cloaked in romance. It was 2 years after his divorce, 2 years into his journey of reclaiming the pieces of himself that he'd let someone else break, that James found himself at yet another charity dinner. He had learned to despise these events, the shallow conversations, the performative philanthropies, the endless parade of people eager to remind you how important they were. But tonight was different, and he didn't know why. Something told him he wasn't just here to sip champagne and plaster on a polite smile. That something turned out to be Samantha Carter. She was hard to miss in her metallic silver dress that seemed to shimmer under the chandelier's light. Her smile was dazzling, her laugh effortless. She drifted through the room with grace, her every step calculated but never stiff. A master class in appearing both untouchable and approachable. James watched her for a moment, sipping his drink slowly, his guarded nature kicking in. Samantha noticed him eventually, his presence too calm and deliberate to blend into the background. She eyed him curiously, intrigued by the way he radiated quiet strength. She'd heard the whispers about James Conway, the former billionaire who'd lost his empire in a turbulent divorce. At a glance, he was an enigma, standing apart from the crowd of sycophants and networkers. And Samantha, for all her confidence, loved a challenge. The moment their eyes met, something shifted. Samantha approached casually, leading with charm as always.
James Conway, isn't it? I've heard about you. I'd say it's nice to meet you, but I imagine you've had a colorful few years.
James chuckled lightly, shaking her hand but remaining composed.
Colorful's a generous way to put it, he replied dryly. You must be Samantha Carter. The Carter name carries quite the reputation, doesn't it?
It was a polite jab, gently calling out the arrogance Samantha often carried with pride. She raised an eyebrow, surprised but not offended. If anything, his lack of deference intrigued her. Most people tiptoed around her name like it was sacred, but James seemed unimpressed. From that opening exchange, a conversation unfolded, sharp, intelligent, laden with veiled challenges. Samantha was used to dominating conversations, steering them seamlessly to her advantage. But James challenged her assumptions, questioned her motivations, and listened closely without feeding her ego. It was unnerving. It was magnetic. Samantha found herself captivated by James's ability to challenge her without arrogance. His approach was refreshing, and she couldn't help but be drawn to his quiet strength. It was a meeting of equals, each testing the other's boundaries, and for the first time in a long while, Samantha felt both challenged and understood. For James, there was something hauntingly familiar about Samantha. The way she spoke, the way she carried herself, the need to be admired, it reminded him of his younger self. He saw fragments of who he used to be before his fall from grace, before life taught him humility the hard way. Part of him wanted to walk away. Life had made him cautious, wary of anyone whose charm might mask ulterior motives. But another part of him, the part that still believed in second chances, in redemption, was tempted to stay. The night stretched on, their conversation growing more candid as the hours passed. Samantha found herself surprised by James, his humor, his depth, and the quiet vulnerability he tried to hide. She rarely felt uncertain, but something about him made her question herself in ways she hadn't before.
You seem different from the others. Most people at these events are either desperate for attention or desperate to prove something, but you're reserved.
James raised an eyebrow, amused.
Should I take that as a compliment?
Maybe. But seriously, what's your story, James Conway? I don't believe for a second that someone like you is just here for the free drinks and superficial charity.
He hesitated, weighing whether to share more than necessary. But something told him she wouldn't flinch at the truth. I've already lived the life everyone here wants, he said simply. The money, the power, the success, it's not what people think it is. Or maybe it is, but you don't appreciate any of it until you've lost it. James exhaled quietly, his gaze steady. Something authentic, something real, the rest of it doesn't matter anymore. His words lingered in the air, stirring something in Samantha she wasn't ready to confront. She had spent her whole life building walls of prestige, power, and status. Being admired was second nature. But what did it really mean? Was there substance beneath it all? Or had James just exposed the truth she'd been avoiding? She wasn't used to such honesty, such unvarnished self-reflection. James saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, doubt she tried to mask with a coy smile. As the dinner wound down, Samantha found herself watching James as he said his polite goodbyes and left the event. He was different, not just from the men she usually met, but from anyone she'd encountered in her curated world of privilege. He unsettled her, and she wasn't sure if she hated it or needed more of it. James, as he drove away, couldn't help but reflect on Samantha. He had learned to shield himself from charm, from appearances, from everything that wasn't genuine. And yet, he couldn't deny the connection he felt. He saw pieces of his younger self in her, ambition mixed with arrogance, confidence masking deeper insecurities. But the question was, could he trust her? Could he risk trying again after everything he'd endured? As the night faded, both were left pondering the strange magnetism between them. Samantha, for the first time in years, questioned whether her life was truly as fulfilling as it seemed. And James, despite his caution, wondered if there was something there worth investing his time and heart in. Over the weeks that followed, James and Samantha's paths continued to cross, sometimes by coincidence, other times by careful orchestration. Conversations grew longer, turning from surface-level banter to deep, meaningful exchanges about life, loss, and the pursuit of something greater than material wealth. Samantha found herself craving James's presence, not just for the thrill of the challenge he presented, but for the unexpected comfort she found in his company. James, on the other hand, remained wary. He had seen what unchecked ambition and privilege could do to a person, and yet Samantha surprised him. Beneath her polished exterior, there was a woman questioning her place in the world, searching for something real. For the first time in years, he felt something beyond cautious curiosity. He felt hope. One evening, James invited Samantha to a small, intimate dinner at a quiet restaurant far removed from their usual social circles. No flashing cameras, no high-profile networking, just the two of them, sharing a meal and a moment of honesty. "You're different," James said, studying her. "I think you've always known it, but you've been too afraid to admit it." Samantha exhaled, her guard slipping. "And what if I have? What if I don't know how to be anything else?" James reached across the table, gently taking her hand. "Then maybe it's time to find out?" That night marked the beginning of something neither of them expected. Samantha started making subtle changes, turning down social engagements that felt hollow, prioritizing relationships over status, even considering stepping away from the relentless corporate ladder she had spent her life climbing. James, in turn, lets down his walls, allowing himself to believe in love again. Months passed, and what began as an intriguing connection deepened into something undeniable. They traveled together, experienced life beyond the confines of wealth and expectation, and for the first time, Samantha felt truly free. James watched as she transformed, not into someone new, but into the person she was always meant to be. A year later, standing on a secluded beach in Santorini, James took Samantha's hands in his and spoke the words he never thought he'd say again.
I don't care about money or status or the world's expectations. I care about you, the real you.
Tears welled in Samantha's eyes as she realized, for the first time in her life, she had found something worth more than any fortune: genuine, unconditional love. And so, against all odds, two people who once defined themselves by their wealth found happiness in something far greater. A love built not on appearances, but on truth. A love that was finally real. A few months later, they exchanged vows in a breathtaking ceremony overlooking the Amalfi Coast. It was an intimate gathering, attended by only their closest friends and family. Gone were the days of extravagant, impersonal galas. This was about them, their love, and the life they were building together. 1 year after their wedding, Samantha and James welcomed twins: a boy, Joshua Carter Conway, and a girl, Ariana Elizabeth Conway. Their days, once filled with high-stakes deals and power plays, were now defined by sleepless nights, soft lullabies, and the pure joy of parenthood. The penthouse in Manhattan was traded for a quiet estate on the outskirts of the city, where they could raise their children away from the pressures of their former world. Samantha found fulfillment not in boardrooms but in bedtime stories. James rediscovered purpose not in rebuilding his empire but in building a family. Together they had finally found what they had spent their entire lives searching for: something real, something lasting, something far more valuable than wealth: love, family, and a future worth cherishing. Thanks for clicking on this tale. Do remember to like, share, and subscribe for future stories. Stay curious.